Have you ever felt like you're just stuck in a loop? You try to change your life, you set all these goals, but somehow you keep ending up in the exact same spot. Well, today, we're diving into a really powerful, timeless framework for genuine self-transformation, all drawn from the work of Pandit Shriram Sharma Acharya. So here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll get right to the heart of the matter and talk about the real root of our problems. Then, we'll unpack these four amazing pillars of progress: Sadhana, Swadhyay, Sanyam, and Sewa. We're going to break down what each of these concepts really means, and most importantly, how they all have to work together to create change that actually sticks. All right, so let's jump right in and start digging into that fundamental reason why, so often, we just feel completely stuck. I mean, think about it. We set goals, we make New Year's resolutions, we really try to improve. But more often than not, we find ourselves slipping right back into those same old patterns. So what gives? Why does that happen? Well, the source material offers an answer that is both profound and incredibly simple. Here's the core idea. The source argues that all our external problems, with our jobs, our relationships, our health, they're really just symptoms. The real cause lies inside, in our own thinking. If our inner world is a mess, well, our outer world is going to be a mess too. The big takeaway here is this: if you want to fix what's going on outside, you absolutely have to start on the inside. Okay, so if the problem is internal, what's the solution? How do we actually fix it? This is where the text lays out a really clear four-part blueprint for what you could call an inner renovation. And here they are, the big four: Sadhana, Swadhyay, Sanyam, and Sewa. These are the foundational pillars that are meant to support a life of real meaning and progress. You can think of them like the four legs of a table. If you take even one away, the whole thing just gets wobbly and unstable. Now, this part is absolutely crucial. You can't just cherry-pick your favorite one. The source is super clear that these four pillars are completely woven together. They're not a checklist you can take off. They're more like a feedback loop, where each one makes the others stronger. It's a single, holistic system designed for balanced, sustainable growth. And this slide just illustrates that idea perfectly with a fantastic analogy. For a farmer to grow anything, they need all four of these things, right? A seed by itself is useless. It needs good soil, it needs fertilizer, and it needs water. It's the exact same way with our own personal growth. For it to really flourish, all four of these practices are completely essential. So let's dive into our first pillar and see how this all starts to build. What exactly is sadhana? Now, it often gets translated as just spiritual practice, but honestly, it's so much more nuanced than that. Sadhana really has two parts. The first is something called upasana, which literally means sitting near. This is the belief part. It's about connecting with a higher ideal, something bigger than yourself, and trying to absorb its positive qualities, kind of like how you'd absorb warmth just by sitting near a fire. Then the second part is sadhana itself, and that's the practical work. This is the nitty-gritty, the daily effort of taming your own negative habits and actively building a better character. The source gives us some amazing analogies to make this crystal clear. Practicing sadhana is like trying to tame a wild horse. It takes patience, it takes consistency. It's like purifying raw, messy ore to get that little bit of pure gold inside. Or it's like a gardener clearing out a wild, overgrown jungle to create a beautiful, orderly park. It's all about transformation through disciplined, focused effort. Okay, so if sadhana is all about refining our character, that kind of begs a question, right? How do we get the wisdom to even know what to do? Well, that's where our second pillar, Swadhyay, comes in. This one is all about refining our minds. Swadhyay, or self-study, is basically a form of mental hygiene. I mean, just think about it. We're constantly bombarded with negativity and junk from the world around us. Swadhyay is the conscious daily practice of fighting back, of intentionally feeding our minds with positive, noble, and inspiring thoughts to counteract all that noise. And I just love this quote from the text because it makes the whole idea so practical and down to earth. None of us would ever dream of not bathing to keep our bodies clean. The source argues we need to treat our minds with that same level of care, regularly washing away all the mental dirt and grime that builds up every single day. So how do you actually do this? Well, it's all about curating your mental diet. You have to be a gatekeeper for your own mind. The source specifically recommends reading and really thinking about the wisdom of great figures from history. Books are framed as this incredible way to have a conversation with the wisest people who ever lived, whenever you want. Okay, so let's recap. We're refining our character with sadhana, and we're feeding our mind with swadhyay. But all of that effort, it generates a ton of energy. And our third pillar, Sanyam, asks the really crucial question: how do we manage and direct all that energy so it doesn't go to waste? Now, Sanyam means self-control, but it's not about suppression or just saying no. It's about intelligent management. We all have a finite amount of energy each day, right? Sanya is the discipline of stopping that energy from leaking out on useless or even harmful things so we can build up a reservoir and channel it powerfully toward what truly matters to us.
And the source gets super practical here, breaking it down into 4 key areas to focus on. First is control of the senses, what you're eating, watching, listening to. Second is control of the mind, keeping it from wandering all over the place. Third, control of your time, which is your most valuable asset. And fourth, control of your finances.
And the benefit here is just profound. When you practice Sanyam, you're essentially plugging all the leaks in your personal energy, and all that conserved power, that becomes the rocket fuel that propels you towards your biggest goals with incredible focus and determination. And this brings us to the final piece of the puzzle, the question that gives this whole system its meaning. We've refined our character, we've sharpened our mind, we've focused our energy, but for what? To what end? This brings us to the fourth and final pillar, Sewa, which is all about our ultimate purpose. Sewa means selfless service. It's built on this really powerful idea that we all owe a debt to the society and the world that has raised and supported us. So practicing Sewa is how we pay that debt forward. It's about giving a portion of our time, our energy, our resources to help others without expecting anything at all in return. And you see how this connects everything right back to the very beginning? We start by changing ourselves so that we can become capable of effectively changing the world around us. At the end of the day, a better society is just a collection of better individuals. Personal progress and social progress are really just 2 sides of the very same coin. And the source even highlights one specific type of service as being the most powerful of all. It's called Jnana Yagna, which you could translate as the sacrifice of knowledge. This is the act of sharing wisdom that uplifts other people, that helps them find their own way and guides them toward a better path for themselves. So as we wrap up, just remember that complete system. Sadhana for character, Swadhyay for the mind, Sanyam for energy, and Sewa for purpose. I'll leave you with a question to think about. Which one of these 4 pillars, if you really focused on it starting today, could unlock the most profound change in your life right now?